In the news tonight, the Lebanese Prime Minister holds an emergency meeting with his security cabinet and military chiefs as the nation mourns 44 people killed in a double suicide bombing claimed by Daesh. The U.S. military says it is reasonably certain drone strikes killed Jihadi John, Daesh's lead executioner and symbol of the group's brutality. And Austria will build a 4-kilometer fence either side of its busiest border crossing with Slovenia to help manage the flow of thousands of migrants a day onto its territory. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour condemned the twin terrorist bombings that rocked the southern suburbs of Beirut yesterday. In a telephone call with his Lebanese counterpart, Tamam Salam, Mansour also conveyed the condolences of His Majesty King Abdullah to the Lebanese people and government, as well as to the families of the victims. Jordan Mansour added stands by Lebanon in these difficult times to overcome the repercussions of this heinous act. Salam, on his part, thanked the Jordanian leadership, government and people over their noble stances towards his country. The Lebanese Prime Minister held an emergency meeting with his security cabinet and military chiefs as the nation mourned the death of 44 people killed in a double suicide bombing. Lebanon, with a history of civil war, has seen deadly spillovers from the Syrian conflict, including a wave of bombings and suicide attacks in 2013 and 2014. But yesterday's twin blasts were the first large-scale attack that took people by surprise. It was also one of the deadliest. Here's more.
Lebanon observed a national day of mourning today after 44 people were killed and hundreds wounded in a double suicide bombing claimed by Daesh terrorists. The blast late yesterday hit a residential and commercial area in the southern suburb of Al-Dahya in Beirut, a Hezbollah stronghold, in the latest spillover of violence from the war in neighboring Syria. According to a Lebanese security official, the first suicide attacker detonated his explosive vest outside a Shiite mosque, while the second blew himself up inside a nearby bakery. An apparent third suicide bomber was found dead, his legs blown off, while he still wore an intact explosives belt. While the government has not named the attackers, the terror group Daesh is proudly thumping its chest. A would-be suicide bomber who survived the attack told investigators he was a Daesh recruit. The Lebanese national said he and 3 other attackers arrived in Lebanon from Syria 2 days ago, according to a source. In the wake of the horrifying attacks, Lebanese newspapers read "United against terrorism" and that the country was ready for a long war. The same sentiment of resilience and unity was also expressed by Lebanese residents.
The situation in Lebanon has become very bad. We don't know how we finished the year with this. It has been a year or maybe a little less with no explosions. We thought we were done with this, but they proved us wrong yesterday. The situation is apparently bad. God protect us for what is coming. The suburbs of Beirut represent all Lebanon. This explosion targeted Lebanon as a whole, not only Beirut's southern suburbs.
Funerals of those killed in the attacks were held with coffins draped in the flags of Hezbollah and Amal, as officials joined friends and family of the victims in the memorial services. Ali Miqdad, a Hezbollah member of parliament, said that the message is clear and that every person in Lebanon, not only in Beirut, will fight against the terrorists at any price, because fighting them will save the whole humanity and the people of the whole region. The Lebanese army established a heavy security presence around the scene of the blast, which till today was still littered with debris, damaged cars and motorbikes and shattered glass. Armed forces were on high alert across the country and trying their best to keep a fragile calm, while ministers urged politicians to put all rivalries aside and work towards ending a political deadlock. Though Lebanon has been described as a stable instability, a country where different factions have lived in relative peace, the recent surge in violence in Lebanon is part of larger regional turmoil. Nancy Khair for the News at 10.
A Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli forces in Hebron during a stone-throwing protest. The violence erupted during a funeral for another Palestinian who died of wounds overnight following clashes at a funeral. Near the West Bank city of Ramallah, 15 Palestinians were shot and wounded by Israelis using live fire, according to Palestinian medics. And in Gaza, medical officials said Israeli forces shot and wounded 4 Palestinians east of the enclave after they threw stones near the fence with Israel. Meanwhile, a Palestinian gunman killed 2 Israelis in the southern West Bank when he opened fire on a family traveling near the Jewish settlement of Otniel, close to Hebron. Kurdish Peshmerga forces, backed by U.S. airstrikes, seized the Iraqi town of Sinjar from Daesh today in one of the most significant counterattacks since the militants swept through the north last year. Iraqi Kurdish Regional President Masoud Barzani also declared victory in an offensive that could provide critical momentum in efforts to capture the western provincial capital Ramadi and Mosul in the north. The liberation of Sinjar will have a big impact on liberating Mosul, Barzani told reporters atop Mount Sinjar overlooking the town. Here are the details.
Kurdish troops and their U.S. allies say Sinjar will be liberated in days. After beginning their advance on Thursday morning, some 7,500 Kurdish Peshmerga and Yazidi fighters say they're close to retaking the northern Iraqi town from Islamic State militants in an offensive that was also backed by U.S. airstrikes.
Peshmerga forces are patrolling each and every alley of the town and they're repelling the militants. We have seized many of their weapons and we have also bodies of dead militants.
Sinjar is both a symbolic and strategic prize. Iraqi Kurdish Regional President Masoud Barzani says its liberation could help in the recapture of Mosul, a bastion of Islamic State. U.S. military advisors say they expect the campaign for Sinjar to last up to 2 weeks before all the militants have been flushed out. But when it does end, they say the offensive here could provide critical momentum in efforts to ultimately defeat Islamic State.
And as Kurdish forces declared victory over Daesh in Sinjar, the Iraqi military said its forces had advanced on 3 fronts to begin clearing the terrorists from the western city of Ramadi. A police officer and a municipal official near Ramadi said federal police had entered a southern district but were moving slowly to avoid explosives they expect terrorists have planted along the roads. The officer said troops had started advancing towards the Euphrates along 2 kilometers of a main road, which would form the final segment of a cordon which security forces have been building for months. Separately, a main road linking Baghdad to Kirkuk in the north was reopened. And in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, a suicide bomber attacked the funeral of a pro-government fighter, killing at least 21 people and wounding 46. Reports said the bomber detonated his explosives-laden vest at a service in the suburbs of Hayy al-Amal. Daesh claimed responsibility for the attack. Also in the capital today, 2 bomb attacks on a Shiite shrine in Sadr city left 7 people dead and nearly 30 others wounded. In the continued fight against Daesh terrorists, the United States and its allies staged 26 airstrikes against the group since yesterday. The combined joint task force said in Iraq, 18 strikes hit near 6 cities, including near Sinjar, targeting tactical units and fighting positions. While in Syria, 1 strike hit the city of Raqqa and another 7 near Al-Hol. One of the strikes conducted by the U.S. and its allies in Syria targeted Daesh terrorists best known as Jihadi John, who participated in gruesome videos of the killings of American and British hostages. Dressed entirely in black, balaclava covering all but his eyes and the bridge of his nose, Jihadi John became a menacing symbol of Daesh brutality and one of the world's most wanted men. His real name is Mohammed Emwazi, a British citizen and computer programming graduate hailing from a well-to-do family. The Pentagon said it was still evaluating the effectiveness of the strike in the Syrian city of Raqqa. If his death is confirmed, it would be an important milestone in the U.S.-led campaign against the group.
Still assessing the results of this strike, but the terrorists associated with Daesh need to know this. Your days are numbered, and you will be defeated. There is no future, no path forward for Daesh which does not lead ultimately to its elimination, to its destruction. And increasingly, we are becoming more clear and coordinated in that strategy.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama said he was focusing on shrinking and constraining Daesh in Syria and Iraq, but acknowledged that problems with the terrorist group would continue until the Middle East stabilizes. In an interview with ABC News, Obama said the goal has to be militarily constraining to the group's capabilities, cutting off their supply lines and cutting off their financing. Although the group still poses a threat, they were not getting stronger, he added.
I don't think they're gaining strength. What is true is that from the start, I don't think they're gaining strength. What is true is that from the start, our goal has been first to contain, and we have contained them. They have not gained ground in Iraq, and in Syria, they'll come in, they'll leave, but you don't see this systematic march by ISIL across the terrain. What we have not yet been able to do is to completely decapitate their command and control structures. But until we get the Syria political situation resolved, and until Assad is no longer a lightning rod for Sunnis in Syria, and that entire region is no longer a proxy war for Shia-Sunni conflict, we're going to continue to have problems.
World and regional powers started arriving in Vienna for a new round of talks in a bid to step up diplomatic efforts to end the 4-year-old Syria conflict. Tomorrow's meeting is especially important because it will discuss specific suggestions and ideas to activate the political process in Syria, thus reaching a political solution to the several-year crisis based on Geneva I meeting. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Nasser Joudeh will take part in the second international ministerial meeting on Syria. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the crisis in Syria could only be solved politically, hoping that the new round of talks would bring some progress in that direction.
I fully agree with that. We need a political solution, and the fact that tomorrow the second round of the Vienna conference with important players will take place not just Russia and the United States of America, but also Iran and Saudi Arabia, shows that we need comprehensive formats in order to get such a political solution. I hope that the meeting tomorrow will be a small step on the way to such a political solution, for which we have to have much more patience.
Austria will build a roughly 4-kilometer fence either side of its busiest border crossing with Slovenia to help manage the flow of thousands of migrants a day onto its territory. It was the latest move by a country on Europe's main migratory corridor, stretching from Greece to Germany, to manage or restrict the influx since hundreds of thousands began pouring into Austria and Germany 2 months ago. Slovenia began erecting a razor wire fence along parts of its border with Croatia on Wednesday, saying it aimed to assert better control over the migrant flow onto its soil that began shortly after Hungary barricaded its southern boundary against the marching crowds. Several European countries have tightened borders and immigration rules as Europe struggles to find a common approach on how to deal with a record influx of migrants. Denmark announced it will tighten its immigration policies, while Sweden introduced temporary border controls. Finland has narrowed the criteria for asylum applications, and Norway is seeking to return a number of Syrian asylum seekers to Russia, where they cross the border. A long time ago, in a cold galaxy far, far away, ice sculptures in Liège, Belgium, put the finishing touches to a Star Wars winter wonderland. 500 tons of ice were used to recreate the glacial universe ahead of the release of the new film Star Wars: The Force Awakens in December. It took an international team of 30 sculptors 4 weeks to create the figurines, which include a chilling Darth Vader, a frosty Darth Maul, and a cool Luke Skywalker. The ice artists worked in conditions of -10 degrees Celsius. It took one sculptor 5 days to build one of the film's most important characters, Yoda, which he intricately constructed out of 80 blocks of ice and used milk to give it white color. The frozen Star Wars universe opens in Liège tomorrow before melting away once the festival comes to an end on January 31st. Runners battled the altitude and blistering heat during the annual volcano marathon in the Atacama Desert in Chile. The race began at an altitude of 4,400 meters in the vicinity of Lascar volcano in a desert commonly known as the driest place in the world. The marathon was a grueling affair for many of the 22 competitors from 9 countries. They not only had to conquer some challenging hills, but had to manage the impact of the energy-sapping heat and oxygen deprivation. Australian Doug Wilson led from the outset to take the title in a time of 4 hours, 42 minutes and 27 seconds. The women's race saw Christina Madsen from Denmark cross the line in first place in a time of 5 hours, 12 minutes and 5 seconds. Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi credit hard work for their success as they each talk about being selected a record 8 times for FIFA Pro's World 11. As voting starts for this year's team, Real Madrid striker Ronaldo spoke about how honored he feels to have been voted into the virtual team so many times by fellow professionals. Ronaldo's sentiments were echoed by his Barcelona rival Messi. Once voting is completed, 55 candidates will be shortlisted and the World 11 will be announced on the 26th. And finally, it continues to be chilly in most regions tonight with southeasterly light winds. As for tomorrow, fair conditions will prevail over most of the country with moderate weather across the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a chilly night and a warm day tomorrow with northerly fresh winds and slightly choppy seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. The Lebanese Prime Minister holds an emergency meeting with his security cabinet and military chiefs as the nation mourns 44 people killed in a double suicide bombing claimed by Daesh. The U.S. military says it is reasonably certain drone strikes killed Jihadi John, Daesh's lead executioner and symbol of the group's brutality. And Austria will build a 4-kilometer fence either side of its busiest border crossing with Slovenia to help manage the flow of thousands of migrants a day onto its territory. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.